What happens when one of Hollywood's most respected actors sits down for what should be a simple morning talk show interview, only to find himself in the crosshairs of a host who seems determined to make him the villain? It only took one comment about his latest project for the entire conversation to spiral into one of the most uncomfortable and shocking confrontations ever broadcast on daytime television. The studio audience had no idea what they were about to witness. Harrison Ford walked onto the View set that morning with his usual quiet confidence, the kind of presence that comes from decades of being one of the most beloved actors in the world. He settled into the guest chair, exchanged pleasantries with the panel, and prepared to discuss his upcoming film. But from the very first question, something felt off. Whoopi Goldberg leaned forward in her chair, her expression already carrying an edge that made the audience shift uncomfortably. "So Harrison, your new movie," she began, her tone dripping with something that wasn't quite enthusiasm. "Another action film at your age. Don't you think it's time to, I don't know, step aside for younger talent?" The other panelists exchanged quick glances. Joy Behar's eyebrows shot up. Sunny Hostin looked down at her notes. Sarah Haynes bit her lip. The question hung in the air like a grenade with the pin already pulled. Harrison Ford's face remained calm, though a flicker of something passed behind his eyes. "I don't think age should determine whether someone gets to do what they love," he replied evenly. "I'm in good shape. I can still do the work, and audiences seem to still enjoy these films." "Audiences," Whoopi repeated, almost mockingly. "Or is it just nostalgia? People clinging to the past instead of embracing fresh voices and new stories?" Joy Behar jumped in, trying to redirect. "I think what makes Harrison's film special is that he brings experience and gravitas that you can't fake. There's a reason people keep coming back." But Whoopi wasn't done. She waved her hand dismissively at Joy. "I'm asking Harrison, don't you think there's something a little, I don't know, selfish about taking up all this space in an industry that's already so hard for younger actors to break into?" The audience went silent. You could hear someone cough in the back row. Harrison Ford sat up a little straighter, his jaw tightening, just slightly. "Selfish," he repeated slowly. "Because I'm still working? Because people still want to hire me for roles?" "Because you're blocking opportunities," Whoopi shot back. "How many younger actors could have had that role? How many new faces could audiences have discovered if you weren't so busy holding on to your glory days?" "Glory days?" Harrison's voice carried an edge now. "I'm not living in the past. I'm working in the present. There's a difference." "Is there?" Whoopi leaned back, a smirk playing at the corners of her mouth. "Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you're trying to recapture something that's already gone. The action hero thing. The leading man thing. Don't you think that ship has sailed?" Joy Behar's eyes went wide. "Whoopi!" she said in a warning tone. But Whoopi ignored her. "I'm serious. At what point do you look in the mirror and say, okay, maybe it's time to transition into different kinds of roles? Character parts. Supporting roles. Things that are more age-appropriate?" Harrison Ford's knuckles went white as he gripped the armrests. "Age-appropriate," he said flatly. "And who decides what's age-appropriate? You?" "The audience decides," Whoopi said. "And I think if you're honest with yourself, you know that audiences are getting tired of seeing the same old thing. They want something new. They want something different. They want actors who reflect the world we live in now, not the world from 30 years ago." Sarah Haynes tried to intervene. "I don't think that's fair. Harrison isn't taking anything from anyone. He earned his career. He's a legend." "Legends know when to retire," Whoopi said sharply, cutting Sarah off mid-sentence. "Legends know when their time is up, and they bow out gracefully instead of desperately clinging to relevance." The studio felt like it had dropped 10 degrees. Even the crew members standing off to the side looked uncomfortable. One camera operator glanced at another with wide eyes. Harrison Ford's expression hardened. The legendary composure he was known for was being tested in real time, and everyone watching could feel the temperature in the room rising. Desperately clinging, he said, his voice low but firm. I show up. I do the work. I give everything to every role. That's not desperation. That's dedication. Dedication or desperation, it all looks the same from where I'm sitting, Whoopi countered. You're what, 80 years old? 81? Don't you have enough money? Enough awards? Enough adoration? When is it enough for you? This isn't about money, Harrison said, his voice rising slightly. This has never been about money. This is about doing what I love. This is about telling stories. This is about craft. Craft, Whoopi repeated mockingly. You keep using these noble words like craft and dedication, but what I see is an old man who can't accept that younger, hungrier, more talented people deserve their shot. Sunny Hostin gasped audibly. Whoopi, come on, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. This is a conversation, Whoopi interrupted, her voice rising. This is me asking legitimate questions that someone needs to ask. How long are we supposed to keep pretending that these older actors are still relevant? How long do we keep giving them the spotlight while talented young people struggle to get noticed? Harrison Ford's hands gripped the armrests of his chair. You want to talk about opportunities? You want to talk about making room? I've spent my entire career supporting young actors, mentoring people coming up, using my platform to help others get seen. I don't owe anyone an explanation for continuing to do what I love. You don't owe anyone? Whoopi's voice dripped with sarcasm. That's exactly the problem. That entitled attitude. That's what's wrong with Hollywood. People like you thinking you're above criticism, thinking you can just keep taking and taking without giving back. People like me? Harrison's voice went cold. What exactly do you mean by that? I mean actors who've had decades of success and still won't step aside, Whoopi said, gesturing broadly. I mean people who've made their fortunes, who've had their time in the sun, who could retire tomorrow and live comfortably for the rest of their lives, but who insist on staying in the game and taking roles away from people who actually need them. Need them? Harrison shook his head slowly. This isn't a charity. This is a profession. Directors hire actors because they're right for the role, not because they need a paycheck. Oh, so you're right for every role you take? Whoopi challenged. Every single action role that comes your way, you're the absolute best choice? Better than every actor in their 30s or 40s who could do it just as well and bring fresh energy to it? I have given back, Harrison said, his voice harder now. For 40 years I've given back. But apparently that doesn't matter to you. Joy Behar tried again to diffuse the situation. Look, I think we're getting off track here. Harrison came to talk about his film, which by the way looks incredible. Can we focus on that? Can we talk about the actual project, instead of turning this into some philosophical debate about age and opportunity? But Whoopi wasn't backing down. She turned to the audience. Let me ask you all something. Don't you want to see new faces? Don't you want fresh talent? Or are we just going to keep recycling the same old actors until they literally cannot stand up anymore? A few uncomfortable laughs rippled through the crowd, but most people sat in stunned silence. This wasn't the playful banter The View was known for. This was something else entirely. Something meaner. Something that felt personal in a way that made everyone watching deeply uncomfortable. You're talking about me like I'm not sitting right here, Harrison said, his voice quiet but intense. You're talking about me like I'm some kind of obstacle that needs to be removed, like I'm a problem that needs to be solved. You're not a problem, Whoopi said, but her tone suggested otherwise. You're just a symptom of an industry that values nostalgia over innovation, that values familiar faces over new voices. Sarah Haynes couldn't hold back anymore. And what about talent? What about the fact that Harrison is genuinely great at what he does? Does that count for nothing? Of course it counts, Whoopi said dismissively. But so does knowing when to step back. So does understanding that your time is up. Harrison Ford stood up. Not quickly, not dramatically. He simply rose from his chair with the quiet dignity of someone who had made a decision. The movement was deliberate, controlled, and somehow more powerful than any angry outburst could have been. I came here to have a conversation, he said, his voice steady, but cold. Not to be insulted, not to be lectured about my worth or my place in an industry I've been part of longer than some of you have been alive. I came here as a guest to discuss a project I'm proud of, with people I thought would treat me with basic professional courtesy. Oh, here we go, Whoopi said, rolling her eyes theatrically. The victim card. The "how dare you question me" routine. Classic defensive behavior from someone who can't handle a little criticism. This is exactly what I'm talking about. This fragility, this inability to accept feedback. Feedback? Harrison's voice went up slightly. You call that feedback? Telling someone they're too old to work? Telling someone they're selfish and desperate? That's not feedback. That's cruelty dressed up as honesty. No, Harrison said firmly, his voice cutting through her words like a knife. Not the victim. Just someone who recognizes when they're not being treated with basic respect. You asked me here as a guest. Guests don't get interrogated about whether they deserve to exist in their own profession. Guests don't get told they're worthless. Guests don't get publicly shamed for having the audacity to still be working. Sarah Haynes stood up too, her face flushed with emotion. Her hands were shaking as she clutched her note cards. Whoopi, this has gone too far. Way too far. Harrison is right. This isn't an interview anymore. This isn't even a debate. This is an attack. A deliberate, calculated attack on someone who came here in good faith. An attack? Whoopi laughed, but there was no humor in it. The sound was harsh, brittle. I'm asking questions. Hard questions, sure. Questions that maybe make people uncomfortable. But if he can't handle questions, if he can't handle someone challenging his choices, maybe he shouldn't be doing press tours. Maybe he shouldn't be putting himself out there if he's going to fall apart the minute someone doesn't worship him. Worship? Harrison's eyebrows shot up. Is that what you think this is about? You think I expect worship? I expect respect. I expect to be treated like a human being. That's not worship. That's baseline decency. Sunny Hostin stood now too, positioning herself slightly between Harrison and Whoopi. Whoopi, listen to yourself. Listen to what you're saying. You're not asking hard questions. You're making accusations. You're attacking his character, his motives, his entire career. There's a difference between tough journalism and being cruel. Questions? Harrison's voice rose for the first time, genuine anger breaking through his carefully maintained composure. You called me selfish. You called me desperate. You called me entitled. You suggested I'm too old to work. You implied that I'm stealing opportunities from younger people. You questioned my right to continue in my own profession. Those aren't questions. Those are insults dressed up as commentary. Those are attacks pretending to be discourse. The audience was completely silent now. Some people were leaning forward in their seats. Others had their hands covering their mouths. A few were openly crying. This was not what anyone had signed up for when they came to watch a daytime talk show. Sunny Hostin reached over and touched Whoopi's arm gently. Maybe we should take a breath here, she suggested, her voice soft and pleading. This conversation has gotten really heated, and I don't think anyone is in a good place right now. Maybe we should pause, regroup, think about what we're saying. Whoopi pulled her arm away sharply. Don't touch me. I'm fine. Perfectly fine. He's the one who can't handle a little pushback. He's the one who's so fragile that he can't answer a simple question about age and relevance without getting defensive and dramatic. Fragile? Harrison's voice was ice now. Pure, cold ice. You want to talk about fragile? You're sitting behind that desk, using your position of power, to tear down someone who came here in good faith. You're using your platform, your audience, your microphone to belittle and demean someone. And you call me fragile? You're the one who can't have a conversation without making it personal. You're the one who can't ask questions without turning them into weapons. You're the one who seems threatened by the mere existence of someone who's still working at my age. So tell me, who's really fragile here? The words landed like hammer blows. Each sentence precise, controlled, devastating. This wasn't an angry outburst. This was a man who had reached his limit and was calmly, methodically defending himself. Joy Behar put her head in her hands. Her shoulders were shaking. Whether from laughter, tears, or sheer disbelief was impossible to tell. The camera operators didn't know where to point their lenses. Should they focus on Harrison, on Whoopi, on the other panelists, on the audience? Every face in the room told a different story of shock and discomfort. The producers in the booth were frantically trying to figure out how to salvage this disaster. Cut to commercial, let it play out. The decision felt impossible. Either choice could make things worse. I call it like I see it, Whoopi said, crossing her arms defensively. Her voice had taken on a harder edge, a stubborn quality that suggested she was digging in rather than backing down. And I see an old actor who can't accept that his time has passed. I see someone who's taking up space that could go to someone more deserving. Someone younger, someone hungrier, someone who actually represents the future instead of desperately clinging to the past. More deserving, Harrison repeated, letting the words hang in the air. Based on what? Age? You think young automatically means more deserving? You think experience and skill and craft don't matter? You think decades of honing your talent, learning your profession, building relationships, understanding the business, all of that counts for nothing compared to simply being younger? I think there's a time to step aside, Whoopi said, her voice getting louder. I think there's a time to recognize that you've had your moment and it's someone else's turn now. I think there's a time to stop being selfish and think about the greater good. But you can't do that, can you? You can't let go of the spotlight. You can't accept that maybe, just maybe, you're not the center of the universe anymore. Sarah Haynes was openly crying now. Stop, she said, her voice breaking. Just stop. This is horrible. This is painful to watch. Why are you doing this? Harrison Ford picked up the microphone that had been clipped to his shirt and carefully removed it. The small action seemed to take an eternity. His fingers worked methodically, unhooking the device, unwinding the wire. Every movement was precise, controlled, deliberate. He set it down on the table in front of him with a soft click that somehow echoed through the entire studio. I've been in this business for over 40 years, he said quietly, his voice carrying a weight that made everyone lean in to hear. I've worked with hundreds of people, thousands, maybe, directors, actors, crew members, producers, writers. I've been on sets all over the world. I've done interviews in every major city. I've sat across from journalists, critics, fans, and fellow professionals. And in all that time, in 4 decades of being in the public eye, I have never, not once, been treated with such blatant disrespect on camera. Never. The words were simple, but they hit with the force of a truck. There was no anger in his voice now. Just a kind of profound sadness mixed with disappointment. Oh, please, Whoopi scoffed, but even she seemed to realize that she was losing the room. You're being dramatic. You're blowing this way out of proportion. Am I? Harrison looked directly at her, his gaze unwavering. You brought me here under the pretense of an interview, and then spent the entire time trying to convince me and everyone watching that I shouldn't be working anymore. You questioned my motives, my character, my integrity, my right to continue doing what I love. You made it personal. You made it cruel. And you think I'm being dramatic for calling that out? You think I'm overreacting for refusing to sit here and absorb your attacks with a smile? A woman in the front row of the audience was sobbing. Her friend had an arm around her shoulders, trying to comfort her. Other audience members looked angry, confused, hurt on Harrison's behalf. This was supposed to be fun. This was supposed to be light entertainment. Instead, they were witnessing something that felt like a public execution. Sarah Haynes was near tears. Mascara was running down her face in dark streaks. "This wasn't supposed to happen like this," she said to no one in particular. Her voice choked with emotion. "This was supposed to be a nice interview, a fun conversation. We were supposed to talk about the movie, laugh a little, maybe share some stories. This was supposed to be easy and enjoyable." "It could have been," Harrison said, turning to her. "I came here ready to talk about the film, about the experience of making it, about working with the cast. But apparently that wasn't the agenda today." Whoopi stood up now too, matching his posture. The agenda is honest conversation. The agenda is asking the questions that need to be asked, instead of just lobbing softballs and pretending everything is perfect. "Honest conversation requires mutual respect," Harrison countered. "It requires actually listening to answers instead of just waiting for your next chance to attack. You haven't been having a conversation with me. You've been performing for the cameras." "Performing?" Whoopi's voice went up an octave. "You're the actor. You're the one who makes millions pretending to be other people. And you're going to accuse me of performing?" "I'm accusing you of being cruel," Harrison said, and the simplicity of the statement landed like a punch. "I'm accusing you of using your position to tear someone down for no reason other than that you can." The audience was dead silent now. Some people had their hands over their mouths. Others were filming on their phones, capturing every second of this unbelievable confrontation. Joy Behar stood up, trying to position herself between them. "Okay, let's everyone just take a step back. Let's breathe. Let's remember that we're all professionals here." "Professionals don't ambush their guests," Harrison said, not taking his eyes off Whoopi. "Professionals don't use their platform to bully people." "Bully?" Whoopi's face contorted with anger. "I'm a bully now? Because I asked you some tough questions? Because I didn't kiss your feet and tell you how wonderful you are? That makes me a bully." "No," Harrison said. "Asking tough questions makes you a journalist. What you did makes you a bully. There's a difference, and you know it." Sonny Hostin tried one more time. "Can we please just stop this? Can we go to commercial and talk this out off camera?" But Whoopi shook her head. "No. He wants to call me a bully on my own show? Let's hear it. Let's hear what the great Harrison Ford really thinks." "You want to know what I think?" Harrison's voice was steady, controlled, but filled with barely contained frustration. "I think you forgot what it means to be gracious. I think you forgot what it means to treat people with dignity. I think somewhere along the way, you started believing that your opinion matters more than basic human decency." Whoopi's eyes flashed. "How dare you come onto my show and—" "Your show?" Harrison interrupted. "This is exactly what I'm talking about. Your show, your platform, your right to say whatever you want to whoever you want. But the moment someone pushes back, the moment someone refuses to just sit there and take it, you act like they've committed some unforgivable sin. You need to leave," Whoopi said suddenly, pointing toward the exit. "You need to get out of here right now." Harrison Ford didn't move. "I was already leaving. I was leaving the moment I stood up. But I want everyone watching to understand why. I'm not leaving because I can't handle criticism. I'm not leaving because my feelings are hurt. I'm leaving because no one, not me, not anyone, should have to sit in a chair and be told they're worthless." "I never said you were worthless," Whoopi protested. "You said I was selfish," Harrison counted on his fingers. "You said I was desperate. You said I was clinging to relevance. You said I was blocking opportunities for others. You questioned whether I deserved to keep working. What part of that wasn't meant to make me feel worthless? Sarah Haynes was crying now, mascara running down her face. This is awful, she whispered. This is just awful. Joy Behar put an arm around Sarah. I know, honey. I know. Whoopi seemed to realize for the first time that she'd lost the room. The other panelists were against her. The audience was shocked into silence. Even the crew members visible at the edges of the shot looked uncomfortable and upset. Look, Whoopi started, her tone shifting slightly. Maybe I came on a little strong. A little strong? Harrison's voice was filled with disbelief. You spent the last 10 minutes trying to convince America that I shouldn't be allowed to work anymore. That's not a little strong. That's vicious. I was making a point about the industry, Whoopi said, but her voice had lost some of its earlier confidence. About how things need to change. Then make your point about the industry, Harrison shot back. Make your point about systemic issues and gatekeeping and all the real problems that exist. But don't use me as your punching bag to make yourself feel important. Don't tear down one person to make some grand statement that you could make 1,000 other ways. Sonny Hostin nodded slowly. He's right, Whoopi. He's actually right. You could have talked about age discrimination in Hollywood without making it personal, without making him feel attacked. Whoopi's jaw clenched. I don't need you piling on too, Sonny. I'm not piling on, Sonny said softly. I'm trying to help you see what just happened here. This went off the rails, and it didn't have to. Harrison Ford took a deep breath, composing himself. I've been doing this long enough to know when a conversation is over. This one ended before it really began. I'm sorry to the audience for the uncomfortable situation. I'm sorry to the panelists who clearly didn't sign up for this. But I'm not sorry for standing up for myself. He turned and started walking toward the exit. The cameras followed him, unsure whether to cut away or keep rolling. Whoopi called after him. Running away? That's your solution? Just walk off when things get difficult? Harrison stopped. He didn't turn around, but he stopped. The entire studio held its breath. I'm not running from difficulty, he said, his back still to the panel. I've faced difficulty my entire career. I've dealt with rejection, criticism, failure, and everything else that comes with this profession. But there's a difference between difficulty and disrespect. And I'm too old and too tired to pretend I don't know the difference anymore. He started walking again. This time, he didn't stop. Joy Behar spoke into the silence he left behind. Well, she said, her voice shaky. That was something. Whoopi sat back down heavily in her chair. Her face was flushed, her hands trembling slightly. He completely overreacted, she said, but no one was listening anymore. Sarah Haynes wiped her eyes. Did he, though? Did he really overreact? Or did you push him too far? Don't you start, Whoopi warned. I'm not starting anything, Sarah said, her voice stronger now. I'm just saying what everyone in this room is thinking. That was uncomfortable to watch. That was painful, and it didn't have to be. Sonny Hostin looked directly at the camera. We need to go to commercial, she said, even though it wasn't her call to make. We really, really need to go to commercial. The director finally took the hint. The feed cut to black, then to advertisements, but the damage was done. Somewhere in the building, Harrison Ford was walking out the door, removing his guest badge, getting into his car. And back in the studio, 4 women sat at a table, trying to process what had just exploded in front of a live audience. Joy Behar broke the silence once the cameras were off. Whoopi, what the hell was that? I was asking questions, Whoopi said defensively. I was doing my job. Your job is to interview guests, Joy said, her voice harder than anyone had heard it in years. Not to eviscerate them. Not to make them feel like garbage for existing. What were you thinking? I was thinking about all the young actors who can't get work because the same old faces keep getting all the roles, Whoopi said, but even she didn't sound convinced anymore. That's not Harrison Ford's fault, Sonny said. That's a systemic issue. That's about studios and producers and executives. Harrison showing up and doing his job well doesn't make him the villain. Sarah was still crying, but she managed to speak through it. He was so nice when he came in. He was polite and friendly and ready to have a good time. And you just went after him. From the very first question, you went after him. Whoopi stood up again, grabbing her notes. I don't have to explain myself to you, any of you. I said what needed to be said. No, Joy said firmly. You said what you wanted to say. There's a difference, and now we all have to deal with the fallout. A production assistant approached the table nervously. We're back in 90 seconds, she said quietly. And, we need to figure out what we're saying when we come back because social media is already exploding. Let it explode, Whoopi said. People will forget about this by tomorrow. I don't think they will, the PA said, showing her phone. It's already trending. #1 on Twitter. #1 on TikTok. Every entertainment site is writing about it. This is big, Whoopi. Sonny took the phone and scrolled through some of the comments. Her face fell. Oh no, she said softly. Oh, this is bad. People are really angry. Angry at him for walking out? Whoopi asked, a hint of hope in her voice. No, Sonny said, handing the phone back. Angry at you. They're defending him. They're saying you were cruel and out of line and that he had every right to leave. The color drained from Whoopi's face. For the first time since the confrontation started, she looked uncertain. They don't understand the context, she said weakly. What context? Sarah asked. We were all sitting right here. We all saw and heard the same thing everyone else did. There's no hidden context that makes what you said okay. 60 seconds, the PA called out, backing away from the table. Joy Behar looked at Whoopi with something like pity. You need to apologize when we come back. You need to acknowledge that you went too far. I'm not apologizing for having an opinion, Whoopi said stubbornly. Then you're making a mistake, Joy said simply. A big one. People don't forget when you treat someone like Harrison Ford that way. He's beloved. He's respected. And you just humiliated him on live television. He humiliated himself by being so sensitive, Whoopi muttered. 30 seconds, the PA called. Sonny leaned forward. Whoopi, please. Just think about what you're going to say next. Think about how this looks. Think about what this means. But Whoopi's expression had hardened again. The moment of uncertainty was gone. She was back to being defensive, back to being right in her own mind. 15 seconds. The women took their positions, adjusted their papers, tried to compose their faces into something resembling professional calm. But everyone watching could see the tension, could feel the discomfort radiating from the desk. And we're live in 5, 4, 3. The cameras came back on. 4 women sat at a desk, looking shell-shocked. And somewhere outside the building, Harrison Ford was already gone, leaving behind one of the most dramatic and uncomfortable moments in daytime television history. The kind of moment that people would talk about for years. The kind of moment that would define careers and change relationships. The kind of moment that happened when someone pushed too hard and someone else finally pushed back.